Right then, welcome back to the world's greatest Bitcoin book club.
I still can't stop laughing every time I say that.
Also, the only Bitcoin book club in the world. This is the HODLing Room, back episode 4. We're on chapter 3 and a little bit of Saifedean Ammusa's The Bitcoin Standard. How's it going, Mike?
All right, thanks. How are you?
Very good. A little bit tired today, but doing fine. Ready
How's
to
the
crack
node
on.
come in for you?
I've given up.
Have you really?
I've given up, yeah.
No.
It was just beyond a joke. It was on for about almost 2 weeks, and it was about 40%, so I've given up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and find an alternative. Maybe at some point I'll get one of those dedicated little computer node things.
Yeah, from my still quite limited understanding of nodes and things, it does seem like it was almost pointless what we were trying to do. I had been asked on Nostr something like this, and someone did reply. I'm just trying to get it open. I can't see what he said, but he basically said it's not bad for like a learning curve, like if you're just trying to learn from it. But I was sort of saying, but it's also something that I would like to. I just want to find the cheapest way, because everyone says it's so decentralized. And it's like, well, what is the cheapest and easiest way for a normal person to run a node then? That's what I want to. That's what I'm trying to find out. If someone knows that and is listening to this, can you let me know? Like, what is the easiest, cheapest way for normal people to run a node? That's what I'm looking for, and that's what I like. If I can do that, then that's great. But it's more so that then I can say to someone else, it's like it doesn't cost you anything. It would be couple of dollars a month on electricity, which is my understanding of what the point of a node was. But maybe I'm missing the point, and maybe it will get there, maybe it's not there yet. I don't really know. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out anyway.
I just checked out my coffee. We're off to a good start.
Yeah, he did also say the start 9 is, or there's at the meetup. What did Chris say? He said.
He said.
Sounds like umbrella, but it's not umbrella.
Oh, umbrell.
Umbrell.
He said that was the best starter one. But he also said
start 9.
He said that if you're wanting to verify your own transactions, that can turn into a little bit of a nightmare if you're doing it 100% yourself, because I would have to open. Is it a rail with you? And then I would have to open it with somebody else, and then he said that like liquidity is a problem within your own Lightning wallet, because if you need to have enough money to I don't really understand it. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think he said Umbrel, so that would be a good one to start with.
Yeah, I think that's just. Or is Umbrel the software, or is like the Start 9? I know you get a little box. And it just basically plug it in, and then it just runs the node 24/7 sort of thing. And then my understanding is then you can like attach like a Sparrow wallet or whatever, and then that's how you can make transactions on it. I think I don't. It still seems so abstract.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned next week and we'll find out. Let me share this window. I was reading yesterday that there was a solo miner that just hit a block yesterday. It was on like one of those Bitacs.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy. What is it? 1 in something? 17 million or something?
It's something like 1 in every 150 years. The chances is like 1 in 150 years if it's on non-stop.
Crazy. But I suppose if there's thousands or millions of those Bitaxes going, then obviously you'd expect it to be more.
That would be a nice little treat, wouldn't it? Just a little Bitax like on your office.
That'd be crazy.
And then I've just mined a block.
3.25 Bitcoin.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed.
Mad.
I've got a spider on my mic. There we go.
But I guess that shows it is just basically a lottery. It is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. If something like that can do it.
Yeah, I'm still debating getting one of those little Bitacs. Apparently they're meant to be the best in terms of hash rate versus power that it takes. They're the most efficient.
Yeah, well, it's better than playing the lottery. So
definitely better chances than playing the actual lottery. 100%.
And the reward is going to be far more significant as well.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah. There we go. Should we crack on?
Sure.
Do you want
Shall
to
I do
read,
this
or
bit?
do you want to read? Yeah, go on then.
Yep. So the Emperor Diocletian has forever had his name associated with fiscal and monetary chicanery, and the empire reached a nadir under his rule. A year after the abdicated, however, Constantine the Great took over the reins of the empire and reversed its fortunes by adopting economically responsible policies and reforms. Constantine, who was the first Christian emperor, committed to maintaining the solidus at 4.5 grams of gold without clipping or debasement, and started minting it in large quantities in 312 AD. He moved east and established Constantinople at the meeting point of Asia and Europe, birthing the Eastern Roman Empire, which took the solidus as its coin. While Rome continued its economic, social, and cultural deterioration, finally collapsing in 476 AD.
Byzantium.
How do you say that word?
Byzantium.
Byzantium. So I've only ever read it in my head. Byzantium survived for 1,123 years, while the solidus became the longest-serving sound currency in human history. The legacy of Constantine is maintaining the integrity of the solidus, made in the world's most recognizable and widely accepted currency, and it came to be known as the bezant.
Funny that when you don't debase the currency, that the empires last, as long as you want. I think the Byzantine Empire is I think we said this last week, actually. It's the longest reigning or longest serving empire of all time ever.
Yeah.
And it just says here that they didn't debase their currency. So,
and I think he makes
big
this
up
point.
Constantine.
Yeah, he makes this point somewhere in here. Basically, without sound money, it always turns into an absolute S show.
Yeah.
Trying to think of another word for it. Basically, so yeah. While Rome burned under bankrupt emperors who could no longer afford to pay their soldiers as the currencies collapsed, Constantinople?
I think it's Constantinople.
Constantinople thrived and prospered for many more centuries with fiscal and monetary responsibility, while the Vandals and the Visigoths ran rampage in Rome. Constantinople remained prosperous and free from invasion for centuries. As with Rome, the fall of Constantinople happened only after its rulers had started devaluing the currency, a process that historians believe began in the reign of Constantine IX Monomachos. So many weird words here. 1042 to 1055. Along with monetary decline came the fiscal, military, cultural and spiritual decline of the empire, as it trudged on with increasing crises until it was overtaken by the Ottomans in 1453. Even after it was debased and its empire fell, the bezant lived on by inspiring another form of sound money that continues to circulate widely to this day in spite of not being an official currency of any nation anymore, and that is the Islamic dinar. As Islam rose during the golden age of Byzantium, the bezant and coins similar to it in weight and size were circulating in the regions to which Islam had spread. The Umayyad Caliph Abdul Malik ibn Marwan defines the
Well done there.
the weight and value of the Islamic dinar and imprinted it with the Islamic Shahada creed in 697 AD. The Umayyad dynasty fell, and after it several other Islamic states, and yet the dinar continues to be held and to circulate widely in Islamic regions in the original weight and size specifications of the bezant, and is used in dowries, gifts, and various religions and traditional customs to this day. Unlike the Romans and Byzantines, Arab and Muslim civilizations' collapse was not linked to the collapse of their money, as they maintained the integrity of their currencies for centuries. The solidus, first minted in Diocletian in AD 301, has changed its name to the bezant and the Islamic dinar, but it continues to circulate today. 17 centuries of people the world over have used this coin for transactions, emphasizing the salability of gold across time.
So they didn't just get overrun by Islam. They actually started debasing their currency a long time before that, and then there we go.
Yeah, I think it's getting to that point now as well. So after the economic and military collapse of the Roman Empire, feudalism emerged as the prime mode of organising society. The destruction of sound money was pivotal in turning the former citizens of the Roman Empire into serfs under the mercy of the local feudal lords. Gold was concentrated in the hands of the feudal lords, and the main forms of money available for the peasantry of Europe at the time were copper and bronze coins, whose supply was easy to inflate, and industrial production of these metals continued to become easier with the advance of metallurgy, making them terrible stores of value, as well as silver coins that were usually debased, cheated and non-standardized across the continent, giving them poor salability across space and limiting the scope of trade across the continent. Taxation and inflation had destroyed the wealth and savings of the people of Europe. New generations of Europeans came to the world with no accumulated wealth passed on from their elders, and the absence of widely accepted sound monetary standard severely restricted the scope for trade, closing societies off from one another and enhancing parochialism as once prosperous and civilized trading societies fell into the dark ages of serfdom, disease, closed-mindedness and religious persecution. Have you looked into much about like taxation and stuff historically?
No, I've actually just bought. We were talking about Dominic Frisby.
Yeah,
He wrote that Bitcoin book. He wrote a book on like the history of taxation.
Yeah,
which I've just got, which is meant to be good. I've looked into it a little bit, but I do know that like 100+ years ago or 150 years ago, there was barely any tax.
Yeah,
there was tax on like certain luxury items like tea or imports and that kind of thing. But in terms of like income tax and
I think
tax
only in 1913 in the US was income tax. Did that even start? And so I've spoke to a few friends about taxation and how because we're so ingrained to think, oh, this is how we pay for like our roads and schools and services, and like how else does the government pay for this?
Well, most of the taxes goes to paying off the government's debt, their interest payments on their loans.
The El Salvador president as well. He, I saw a speech of him saying at one time is that basically because governments can just print their own money, what is the point in tax?
It's a good point, yeah.
And the reason is, and he actually said this as well, is the only reason for taxation in today's age is making people believe that they're paying for stuff. That is the only point in it today, because it's literally not really doing anything. Like it even, I don't think it even covers the debt at the moment. I think it's over $1 trillion or something that they spend on interest on the debt at the minute, so per year. So in the US, but yeah. Anyway, where were we here? Yeah. While it is widely recognised that the rise of the city-states dragged Europe out of the Dark Ages and into the Renaissance, the role of sound money in this rise is less recognised. It was in the city-states that humans could live with the freedom to work, produce, trade and flourish, and that was to a large extent the result of these city-states adopting a sound monetary standard. It all began in Florence in 1252 when the city minted the florin, the first major European sound coinage since Julius Caesar's aureus. Florence's rise made it the commercial centre of Europe, and its florin becoming the prime European medium of exchange, allowing its banks to flourish across the entire continent. Venice was the first to follow Florence's example with its minting of the ducat, of the same specifications of the florin in 1270, and by the end of the 14th century, more than 150 European cities and states had minted coins of the same specifications as the florin, allowing their citizens the dignity and freedom to accumulate wealth and trade with a sound money that was highly saleable across time and space, and divided into small coins allowing for easy divisibility. With the economic liberation of the European peasantry came the political, scientific, intellectual and cultural flourishing of the Italian city-states, which later spread across the European continent. Whether in Rome, Constantinople, Florence or Venice, history shows that a sound monetary standard is a necessary prerequisite for human flourishing, without which society stands on the precipice of barbarism and destruction. That's the key sentence there. I think that's, I haven't highlighted or touched much in this book, but that is, I noticed this when I just had a flick through earlier. I had highlighted that one sentence.
Really?
I think that last one. So if you just go back one page. History shows, so from there, history shows that a sound monetary standard is a necessary prerequisite for human flourishing, without which society stands on the precipice of barbarism and destruction. And I think that's the whole point of this whole chapter.
Yeah.
And that just sums up.
Fix the money, fix the world.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Although the period following the introduction of the florin witnessed an improvement in the soundness of money, with more and more Europeans able to adopt gold and silver for saving and trade, and the extent of markets expanding across Europe and the world, the situation was far from perfect. There were still many periods during which various sovereigns would debase their people's currency to finance war and lavish expenditure. Given that they were used physically, silver and gold complemented each other. Gold's high stock-to-flow ratio meant it was ideal as long-term store of value and means of large payments, but silver's lower value per unit of weight made it easily divisible into quantities suitable for smaller transactions and for being held for shorter durations. Just on that point, I think this is why so many shitcoins like XRP believe there's a place for it.
Okay, yeah.
And so a lot of people, and things like Casper now, a lot of people that hold Casper and XRP are convinced of this. They believe there's a place for both. So
they're going for the digital. If Bitcoin's digital gold, they're going for the digital silver because
so something like
process
Casper,
more transactions.
I've noticed this with like the Casper. Honestly, there's like a whole Casper army now. It's like it's taken over from XRP. I've realised if you look on Twitter or social media, YouTube comments.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of Casper
people
stuff.
that go into it.
Yeah,
and I've looked so much into Casper. And really, the bottom line is that they believe that they've solved the trilemma, which is. So it's decentralized, secure and fast transactions.
Scalable.
Yeah, so the scalability, which is basically the fast transactions. But they don't understand that Bitcoin already does that, but with a layer 2. So things like Lightning already do the scalability, and it doesn't always have to be on the base layer for it to work, sort of thing. And so they believe there's a place for both. They're like, no, Bitcoin will be like the gold, and then Casper will be like the silver, which people actually use.
But they don't have the They don't have the network.
Yeah, I would argue as well, it's nowhere near as decentralized as Bitcoin, just because even if you look it up, there's something like 300 full nodes on Casper or something like that, whereas there's 22,000 on Bitcoin, which are all over the world, and the Casper argument is that, but it doesn't really matter. You can run partial nodes and it's still fully decentralized. There's no one entity that controls it, similar to Bitcoin and things like that. But it's just.
But who made it? Is there a company that made it, or?
I think so, but they just stepped back or something, is my understanding.
Okay.
So they're no longer involved, similar to the way that Satoshi did it, which is their argument. So he made it, but then he stepped back. And has left it for everyone. But the simple fact is, you only need one money protocol. You don't. There's not going to be two. There is. I know it's a meme, but there is no second best. It's not going to work like even as you look through here with the whole story with gold and silver, it never really properly works long term sort of thing. It worked because that was the best that we had. But it's like saying that, we've got the internet, so why don't we just use internet 2.0 for certain things? But
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to, you need two sets of infrastructure, and it would just be pointless. Whereas if you just concentrate on the one protocol, the one money protocol, which is the thing that's different, I would be happy if it was Casper. Like, I don't mind, but we just need to focus on one. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have no issue, but the simple fact is that Bitcoin already has the history, already has 16 years, the last 13 years of 100% uptime. It already has thousands of nodes, billions spent on miners, and the physical infrastructure that is already in place. So why is anyone trying to do another one? But it's hard to. I'm also aware I have my own biases, and I am open to learning more about how Casper is far superior, as what the Casper army will say. But like, if you just bring it back to first principles, the only thing that
is it needed at all? This is the thing. Like,
the only thing that Casper does differently is the scale. So basically faster transactions. But Bitcoin already does that on the layer 2.
So is that not the same argument as Bitcoin Cash?
Exactly. Which it's all the same thing. Every single one. So the XRP, Bitcoin Cash, all of them come down to the same thing, is that like the whole scalability and basically faster transactions, higher block sizes, which makes it less decentralized, which was my point I was just saying, how I don't believe. I'm also aware that I don't know enough to say this. Like, I wouldn't be able to
the size of the network itself. As the network grows, then it adds to the security of the network. So you've got more nodes, you've got more infrastructure securing the actual Bitcoin blockchain.
Yeah.
And as the network grows as well, it increases the decentralization. Well, a secondary blockchain on a completely different protocol, it's not going to have that level. So why on earth? Yeah, exactly. Like it. It doesn't make any sense.
There's very good marketing around Casper and all of these kind of altcoins, and there's very smart sounding people that say these things and say confusing words. But I'm just very much like, just take it back to very basic first principles. Like, what is better about Casper than Bitcoin? And the whole thing is the scalability, which I believe in the long term will make it less decentralized.
Well, yeah, this was the whole.
Need to figure out the whole node thing.
This was the whole like block size debate before my time.
Yeah.
It was about scalability, and it was, by the sounds of it, the right people won the debate.
You just need the key thing, in my opinion, is making it as decentralized and secure as possible. And you hear Jeff Booth on his hundreds of podcasts, he always says that. He will always say those words. As long as Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, it will reprice the whole system. And he'll say that in various words in every single podcast that he's ever on. And I think that is the key. And so our sole focus is to help make Bitcoin stay decentralized and secure, such as learning how to run a node, actually using the system for what it was made for, sort of thing. That should be, once you are orange pilled and you understand Bitcoin and you're like, yeah, I'm in on this. I believe that's what everyone's time should be spent doing, making it stay decentralized and secure. And everything else can be sort of like the whole scalability, faster transactions. It can just be done on another layer, and then you can just then convert back to the base layer whenever you need savings. Basically, is the way I see it.
So it's already been solved.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, anyway, back to it. So given that they were used physically, silver and gold complemented each other. I've read that bit, haven't I? At the bottom of that. While this arrangement had benefits, it had one major drawback. The fluctuating rate of exchange between gold and silver created trade and calculation problems. Attempts to fix the price of the two currencies relative to one another were continuously self-defeating, and gold's monetary edge was to win out. As sovereigns set an exchange rate between the two commodities, they would change holders' incentives to hold or spend them. The inconvenient bimetallism continued for centuries across Europe and the world, but as with the move from salt, cattle and seashells to metals, the inexorable advance of technology was to provide a solution to it. Two particular technological advancements would move Europe and the world away from physical coins and in turn help bring about the demise of silver's monetary role. The telegraph, first deployed commercially in 1837, and the growing network of trains allowing transportation across Europe. With these two innovations, it became increasingly feasible for banks to communicate with each other, sending payments efficiently across space when needed and debiting accounts instead of having to send physical payments. This led to the increased use of bills, checks and paper receipts as monetary media instead of physical gold and silver coins. More nations began to switch to a monetary standard of paper fully backed by and instantly redeemable into precious metals held in vaults. Some nations would choose gold and others would choose silver, in a fateful decision that was to have enormous consequences. Britain was the first to adopt a modern gold standard in 1717, under the direction of physicist Isaac Newton, who was the warden of the Royal Mint. And the gold standard would play a great role in it advancing its trade across its empire worldwide. Britain would remain under a gold standard until 1914, although it would suspend it during the Napoleonic Wars from 1797 to 1821. The economic supremacy of Britain was intricately linked to its being on a superior monetary standard, and other European countries began to follow it. Again, this kind of makes my point of like the whole having silver and gold was more disruptive in some ways, rather than just focusing on gold or focusing on the most soundest form of money. And you can see Britain, by going on the gold standard, was the financial superior country of the world by doing
this would have been
sort of thing.
This would have been peak British Empire, I guess.
It's game theory. Back then, they were the first nation to take on the gold standard, so they were superior. And so, in a lot of ways, Trump, with all of his flaws, has maybe already done a huge thing by front-running other nations and putting Bitcoin.
If he actually does it, this is the thing.
If it's actually done properly, and whether they hold as much as they say they hold or whatever. So, but I think they're the closest nation anyway to actually doing it. I know there's rumours of like, is it UAE has already bought a lot or something, but no one really knows. I don't think we're going to really know until they're like 10 years down the line. Yeah, we already own this much.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to do it slyly, I think. The economic supremacy of Britain was... Oh yeah, I've read that bit. The end of the Napoleonic Wars heralded the beginning of the golden age of Europe, as one by one the major European nations began adopting the gold standard. The more nations officially adopted the gold standard, the more marketable gold became, and the larger the incentive became for other nations to join, hence game theory. Further, instead of individuals having to carry gold and silver coins for large and small transactions, respectively, they could now store their wealth in gold in banks while using paper receipts, bills and checks to make payments of any size, hence the Lightning wallet. The holders of paper receipts could just use them to make payment themselves. Bills were discounted by banks and used for clearance, and checks could be cashed from the banks that issued them. This solved the problem of gold's salability across scales, making gold the best monetary medium. For as long as the banks hoarded people's gold, would not increase the supply of papers they issued as receipts. With these media being backed by physical gold in the vaults and allowing payment in whichever quantity or size, there was no longer a real need for silver's role in small payments. The death knell for silver's monetary role was the end of the Franco-Prussian War, when Germany extracted an indemnity of £200 million in gold from France and used it to switch to a gold standard. with Germany now joining Britain, France, Holland, Switzerland, Belgium and others on a gold standard, the monetary pendulum had swung decisively in favour of gold, leading to individuals and nations worldwide who use silver to witness a progressive loss of their purchasing power and a stronger incentive to shift to gold. Hence, if you use Casper or XRP, you will see that same thing. India finally switched from silver to gold in 1898, while China and Hong Kong were the last economies in the world to abandon the silver standard in 1935. For as long as gold and silver were used for payment directly, they both had a monetary role to play, and their price relative to one another remained largely constant across time, at a ratio between 12 to 15 ounces of silver per ounce of gold, in the same range as their relative scarcity in the crust of the earth and the relative difficulty and cost of extracting them. But as paper and financial instruments backed by these metals became more and more popular, there was no more justification for silver's monetary role, and individuals and nations shifted from holding gold, leading to a significant collapse in the price of silver, from which it would not recover. The average ratio between the two over the 20th century was 47 to 1, and in 2017 it stood at 75 to 1. While gold still has a monetary role to play, as evidenced by central banks hoarding of it, silver has arguably lost its monetary role.
Interesting. This one thing I don't get is that you see all of these countries going onto a gold standard, right? Kind of, as you were saying, game theory is one joins on and starts thriving, the others have to also jump on. And all of those countries were thriving around that time. Well, this is one thing that's never really clicked, is that just because a sounder money exists doesn't necessarily mean that we will move towards it. For example, all of these countries today could still be on a gold standard, but they're not. Like, gold exists to this day, but there's a reason why these countries have since been moved away from a gold standard. Does that make sense?
Do you know what the reason is?
I would say, I mean, I would think that, they mentioned telegraph poles, that they needed the ledger to be updated quickly, so they made paper on top, but then certain banks and countries just started kind of printing a bit more paper because they wanted to go to war, because they wanted more money, and now they just do that. There's the group of people have just said, well, we want more money, so we're going to print more money out of thin air. It's a nefarious thing, basically. Like, there's a group of nefarious people in charge, but that's what we're up against. What my point being is, just because a sounder money exists, for example, like just because we have Bitcoin now, doesn't necessarily mean that all of these countries are going to naturally start adopting and going onto a Bitcoin standard. Why on earth would they? Like, why would they want a currency that they can't print out of thin air? Why would they want that? Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
So it's
the rabbit hole that I've been going down over this last year massively, and my opinion has changed massively on this actually over the last year. And Jeff Booth has a lot to do with that, to be fair. Like, I'm sure everyone that is listening to this at the moment has watched a lot of Jeff Booth or knows a lot about him. But yeah, it's quite simply that the reason everyone came off the gold standard was purely to do with greed. There's no other way to describe it. There's individuals' greed to want more, desire more, and the World War One. Power. World War One was a massive point for a lot of European countries where they came off the gold standard, and it's crippled them since. And so that's how the US by 1944 became the reserve currency and like the powerhouse, because they basically, thanks to the massive ocean, were separated enough not to have to be immediately evolved, and stood back long enough and just said, yeah, keep giving us your gold and we'll keep sending you some weapons and whatever else it is that you want. And they're just hoarding the gold, and then eventually they're like, yeah, we'll come and save the day. And if you US history, US are the ones that won the war for everyone and they saved the day, but they just held back as long as they could, accumulated all the gold, all the sound money, while everyone else was being greedy, trying to drag out the war. But I guess they kind of had to, like Britain kind of had to, because Germany did. And so if Britain stayed on the gold standard at that time, they would have just literally run out of gold, and they would then also have no money. They wouldn't be able to continue in the war. And so it's just, but again, it's only happened because of people's greed, that whole thing. But the reason why countries would go to a gold standard is exactly, it's game theory.
Yeah, I can see why countries would want to move to and hold the sounder money, because they're going to want to retain their power.
It's exactly the same as why individuals will move to the soundest money possible. It is because you're like, when you live in one, like as Jeff Booth says, if you live in a Bitcoin standard, your purchasing power is just increasing every year. Everything's getting cheaper, while everyone's moaning about the price of everything going up. In your reality, if you live on Bitcoin, everything's getting cheaper. So you're literally living in a totally different world, and you don't need anyone's permission. You don't need any other country to do this. You can just move your time and energy into a Bitcoin standard, and you are living with a better monetary system that is, everything's getting cheaper.
When was it in America where they basically confiscated the gold off all of the citizens? Was that?
I think it was 1933, and in 1934.
Right, so it was like World War II
by
time.
70%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I can see countries being like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get all this Bitcoin because we want the power, we want the sound money." But the citizens, it's illegal for you to hold Bitcoin, but we're going to have it. We're going to confiscate all of this. But again, this comes down to how could they confiscate it?
But yeah, again, this is the thing. If you buy Bitcoin non-KYC and store it properly, there is no way that they can confiscate it or even know that you own it, sort of thing. So this is the whole point of. Well, I still think the vast majority of Bitcoin holders miss this, is that we have to store some properly. It doesn't have to be everything, but we do need some that are, and it's the same argument for a lot of gold holders. Like, you actually need the physical stuff. You can't just be buying it and getting the paper stuff.
Yeah.
So it's basically the same argument there, but it's even more so important with Bitcoin, I think, just because otherwise it's not even going to be used. If everyone just uses it because number go up and they want to see their fiat value increase and are happy just to leave it in an ETF, this is where that whole centralization and the issues can come from. And I think that's probably the biggest risk to Bitcoin. But as long as there are people, just think of how many people we met in Prague, people at meetups and stuff that are fully in on Bitcoin now. They already have their full node. They already know how to transfer it properly and hold it and store it properly as securely as you can. And then there's people like me and you that are trying to get there. We're trying to learn this and trying to get there. The more people like me and you that do this, the more decentralized it becomes, the more secure it becomes. And there is nothing that these financial institutions can do. And I think this is, again, where so many of like my friends don't understand that part. They just think, yeah, but surely, they've done it throughout history. They're just going to end up controlling it and they'll ruin it and, they'll mess it up. It's like, but they just can't. As long as there are
this is the
enough
thing,
people that do it properly, there's nothing they can do.
It's mind-blowing, really.
It is.
I'm still, my mind's still blown by it every single day.
Yeah. I feel like I've only just scratched the surface as well.
I know.
I think did you mention in your last video as well, that whole thing of where you feel like you're a genius and then you learn more and then you realise how much.
The Dunning-Kruger
effect. That's exactly it. Anyway, so the demonetization of silver had a significantly negative effect on the nations that were using it as a monetary standard at the time. India witnessed a continuous devaluation of its rupee compared to gold-based European countries, which led the British colonial government to increase taxes to finance its operation, leading to growing unrest and resentment of British colonialism. By the time India shifted the backing of its rupee to the gold-backed pound sterling in 1898, the silver backing its rupee had lost 56% of its value in the 27 years since the end of the Franco-Prussian War. For China, which stayed on the silver standard until 1935, its silver, in various names and forms, lost 78% of its value over the period. It is the author's opinion that the history of China and India and their failure to catch up to the West during the 20th century is inextricably linked to this massive destruction of wealth and capital brought about by the demonetization of the monetary metal these countries utilized. The demonetization of silver, in effect, left the Chinese and Indians in a situation similar to West Africans holding agri beads as Europeans arrived. Domestic hard money was easy money for foreigners and was being driven out by foreign hard money, which allowed foreigners to control and own increasing quantities of the capital and resources of China and India during the period. This is a historical lesson of immense significance. I want to reiterate that.
They went on to an XRP standard rather than Bitcoin standard.
Exactly. And I just think it's just there. It's all there for us in history. And I've said it so many times to people. It's like, you just look at monetary history and you'll just see what is going to happen. But most people are too fixated on making fiat to worry about it. So.
Well, you can take the lesson on a micro scale or a macro scale as well. So like on an individual, you know, if you want to move towards, if you want to keep your money in the bank while it gets debased and debased and debased, you're going to be struggling in 20 years, 30 years. If you move over to a more sounder money, then you're probably going to keep your head out the water.
Exactly. Yeah, and so this is a historical lesson of immense significance and should be kept in mind by anyone who thinks his refusal of Bitcoin means he doesn't have to deal with it. Which is exactly what you were just saying.
Well, yeah, everybody gets it at the price they deserve. This is like, sooner or later, this is game theory as well. Sooner or later, it's going to come knocking on your door.
Yeah, and with like a group of friends, or a close group of friends who have sort of been interested in this sort of stuff, I try to like slowly drip feed things in. I try not to be pushy with it, but it's just got to this stage now where it's like, just open your freaking eyes, guys. Like, you know, I'm genuinely trying to help. It's gone beyond the point of like nicey, just do your own research. It's like, no, stop being idiots and look at this, because otherwise you are going to struggle so much in these next 10-20 years, and people just don't realise it.
I mean, read the next sentence. So history shows it is not possible to insulate yourself from the consequences of others holding money that is harder than yours.
That's it.
There we go.
That is it. With gold in the hands of increasingly centralised banks, it gained salability across time, scales and location, but lost its property as cash money, making payments in it subject to the agreement of the financial and political authorities issuing receipts, clearing checks and hoarding the gold. Tragically, the only way gold was able to solve the problems of salability across scales, space and time was by being centralised and thus falling prey to the major problem of sound money, emphasised by the economists of the 20th century. Individual sovereignty over money and its resistance to government centralised control. We can thus understand why 19th century sound money economists like Menger focused their understanding of money's soundness on its salability as a market good, whereas 20th century sound money economists like Mises, Hayek, Rothbard and Salerno focused their analysis of money's soundness on its resistance to control by a sovereign. That's interesting. Because the Achilles heel of the 20th century money was its centralisation in the hands of the government. We will see later how the money invented in the 21st century, Bitcoin, was designed primarily to avoid centralised control.
There we go.
And again, that was my point as well about Bitcoin. Like that is our sole focus, is just making sure it stays secure and decentralised, and that is avoiding centralised control. And so all these other distractions are only that, they're just distractions.
Yeah, I mean, this sentence again, history shows it's not possible to insulate yourself from the consequences of others holding money that is harder than yours. Even on a like a geopolitical scale, like countries, if you've got like China starting to like hold Bitcoin, America, they're going to have to start holding Bitcoin. Oh, you know, as I said before, it's true on the macro scale as well as between me and you on the micro scale.
Exactly.
So they have to jump on board at some point, and I think we are seeing them now jump on board. It wouldn't surprise me if a lot of them are just like mining Bitcoin in secret.
Well, yeah. Did you see what was it recently? Was it Iran or Iraq? I kind of don't really follow too much.
Iran probably.
Iran with like like they did bombings or something in Qatar and but it was all controlled. So like they shut the airspace, and because I still have friends that live there, and they were saying they heard them come over and stuff. It was pretty scary, but it was just something over. They literally just flew planes over the US airbase in Qatar, and I don't even know if they really even did anything. It was just more to flex or whatever it was that they were doing. But anyway, when that happened, I think there was a retaliate, or it was because of something that had already happened in Iran. Wasn't there like a bombing or something that the US had done there or something? But anyway, they took down a ton of miners in Iran.
I did read about this, that the hash rate in Iran dropped or something.
Yeah, and it was something like, I feel like it was like 20% of all of the hash rate. I might just be, this is off the top of my head, and like I said, I don't really follow this sort of stuff too closely, just because it was to do with this hash rate that I picked up the story. But it was way more than what anyone I don't know if it was because, I doubt it was because of Bitcoin. I don't think there's anything to do with that. I think it was just a coincidence. But basically, I don't think anyone knew that there was this much mining going on in Iran, basically. So exactly like you're saying, there could be tons of stuff that we just don't even know going on already.
Yeah, well, you would do, wouldn't you? You wouldn't.
I do think these next sort of 5-10 years, this whole game theory of nation states owning it is going to play out, and I think it's been sped up as well with what Trump and the US has done in the last few months. So,
because every state is going to want to control the network. So they're gonna invest exactly, but they're gonna invest loads into like mining infrastructure. But so then other countries are as well. So then the network is going to have such a high hash rate that the difficulty is going to increase so much that they can never like grasp enough of it, because it's going to get harder and harder for them.
Yeah.
So
I think
it's almost like the perfect system to just like reduce power grabs and centralized. I can see that the powers that be just being so frustrated that Bitcoin even exists.
Yeah,
because they can't take hold of it, and the more they try and take hold of it, the harder it becomes to take hold of. The more energy they put in. It's almost like once the Eye of Sauron is on there, then it gets even harder and harder for them to grasp onto it, and they get more frustrated, so they focus more on it, but then it gets even harder. Yeah,
it's a total, like, it's just so far beyond normal thinking.
Well,
it's so hard for us to understand.
I don't think there's ever been anything like it before.
It hasn't. It's not even close.
No.
I think but there was like B money and Bitgold, which almost did what Bitcoin did. So there were attempts to make this before, but like it just hasn't been done anywhere near as well, sort of thing. But I think from the governments and countries' point of view, is more just benefit from it. I think that's what they're starting to realise now, is that why don't they've already been through trying to destroy it, trying to ban it. That's already happened, and if they've got any sense, they've kind of figured out that it's just not possible to do. So then it's just that you can't beat them, join them. It literally is that.
Yeah, pretty much.
You can put your country in such a strong position by just owning it and helping to secure it and helping to decentralize it. But yeah, they will. I'm sure there's still many twists and turns yet to come, and definitely. I'm sure they'll make it sound like it's still rat poison and that you need to trust their CBDC. That will keep you safe.
Yeah.
Anyway, so next bit, the end of the Franco-Prussian War in 1871 and the consequent shift of all major European powers onto the same monetary standard, namely gold, led to a period of prosperity and flourishing that continues to appear more amazing with time and in retrospect. A case can be made for the 19th century, in particular the second half of it, being the greatest period for human flourishing, innovation and achievement that the world has ever witnessed, and the monetary role of gold was pivotal to it. With silver and other media of exchange increasingly demonetized, the majority of the planet used the same golden monetary standard, allowing the improvements in telecommunications and transportation to foster global capital accumulation and trade like never before. Different countries were simply different weights of physical gold, and the exchange rate between one nation's currency and the other was the simple conversion between different weight units, as straightforward as converting inches to centimetres. The British pound was defined as 7.3 grams of gold, while the French franc was 0.29 grams of gold, and the Deutschmark 0.36 grams, meaning the exchange rate between them was necessarily fixed at 26.28 French francs and 24.02 Deutschmark per pound. In the same way, metric and imperial units are just a way to measure the underlying length, national currencies were just a way to measure economic value as represented in the universal store of value, gold. Some countries' gold coins were fairly saleable in other countries, as they were just gold. Each country's money supply was not a metric to be determined by central planning committees stocked with PhD holders, but the natural working of the market system. People held as much money as they pleased and spent as much as they desired on local or foreign production, and the actual money supply was not even easily measurable. The soundness of money was reflected in free trade across the world, but perhaps more importantly was increasing savings rates across most advanced societies that were on the gold standard, allowing for capital accumulation to finance industrialization, urbanization, and the technological improvements that have shaped our modern life. Interesting. So the major European economies periods under the gold standard.
Yeah, if you go into a sound money, your country thrives. If you go off it, your country... What's the opposite of thrive?
Deteriorates.
Deteriorates, exactly, yeah.
It is.
That's what we're in
It
now.
is as simple as that. And you just look at any monetary history and you can see it. If you're whatever country, nation, whatever place, if they are using a sound monetary system, it just gets better. And I think it's really hard for us to understand that because we've only lived in possibly the worst ever world economic situation ever. Like, I don't, as far as I'm aware, I don't believe there's ever been the whole world as a fiat currency all at the same time.
No, I don't think there has, no.
Because even not too long ago, Switzerland was still on the gold standard. They stayed on it much later.
I think they were the last one to come off.
They were in the 90s, and I believe they even went back. They even tried to go back onto a gold standard, and I just don't think it worked. So they're one of the much more recent ones that stayed on a gold standard.
There were a few countries up until like the millennium that were not like members of the... You know, is it the IMF or the Bank of International Settlements, which is like the central bank for central banks?
Yeah.
There were a few countries in like the year 2000 that weren't a member of that. You know, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, Libya. Is that where have we been at war with for the past 20 years, and who is now a member of those? Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya. Not Iran though, not Iran yet. But I'm sure it's because they're just such evil people that we're going to war with them. Not the fact that they're not a member of the the thing yet. Anyway, I think it's a little conspiratorial there.
Quite accurate though.
Yeah.
So by 1900, around 50 nations were officially on the gold standard, including all industrialized nations, while the nations that were not on an official gold standard still had gold coins being used as the main medium of exchange. Some of the most important technological, medical, economic and artistic human achievements were invented during the era of the gold standard, which partly explains why it was known as La Belle Époque, or the beautiful era, across Europe. Britain witnessed the peak years of Pax Britannica, where the British Empire expanded worldwide and was not engaged in large military conflicts. In 1899, when American writer Nellie Bly set out her record-breaking journey across the world in 72 days, she carried British gold coins and Bank of England notes with her. It was possible to circumnavigate the globe and use one form of money everywhere Nellie went. In the United States, this era was called the Gilded Age, where economic growth boomed after the restoration of the gold standard in 1879 in the wake of the American Civil War. It was only interrupted by one episode of monetary insanity, which was effectively the last dying pang of silver as money, discussed in Chapter 6, when the Treasury tried to remonetize silver by mandating it as money. This caused a large increase in the money supply and a bank run by those seeking to sell treasury notes and silver to gold. The result was the recession of 1893, after which US economic growth resumed. With the majority of the world on one sound monetary unit, there was never a period that witnessed as much capital accumulation, global trade, restraint on government, and transformation of living standards worldwide. Not only were the economies of the West far freer back then, the societies themselves were far freer. Governments had very few bureaucracies focused on micromanaging the lives of citizens, as Mises described it.
Now we've got far too much of that.
Yeah, and again, this took me ages to really get my head around, is that by using a free money or global free monetary system, whatever you want to call it, basically by using Bitcoin, we actually reduced the need for governments and control that. And again, it took me ages to figure out. Hold on, let me just close my door a sec. Can you read that bit?
Yeah. As Mises described it, the gold standard was the world standard of the age of capitalism, increasing welfare, liberty and democracy, both political and economic. In the eyes of the free traders, its main eminence was precisely the fact that it was an international standard as required by international trade and the transactions of the international money and capital markets. It was the medium of exchange by means of which Western industrialism and Western capital had borne Western civilization to the remotest parts of the earth's surface, everywhere destroying the fetters of old-aged prejudices and superstitions, sowing the seeds of new life and new well-being, freeing minds and souls and creating riches unheard of before. It accompanied the triumphal, unprecedented progress of Western liberalism, ready to unite all nations into a community of free nations peacefully cooperating with one another. It is easy to understand why people viewed the gold standard as a symbol of this greatest and most beneficial of all historical changes. Well, let's hope that we're going into another period of nicety, like that.
Yeah,
something nice, some flourishing.
Was it you that sent me I can't remember what it's called actually, but you know where it's like 20, there's like 4 20 years, basically 80-year blocks. I don't know if it was you, it was someone that sent me this, but it was, we're now at the fourth, that's what it's called.
The fourth turning, yeah.
Yeah, the book, The Fourth Turning.
I know of it, but I haven't read it yet. But I think
yeah, it's very interesting.
Lawrence Lepard talks about it, and maybe even Jeff Booth talks about it as well.
Yeah, but we're now at that. The horrible part.
Ah, really?
So,
okay.
But once you come out of that,
yeah,
it looks like it would be, that's like the nicest, like the next 40 years basically are the best kind of time. But it just explains so much as well. Like when you read that, it's like, oh, okay, this is why. This is literally just a cycle.
Yeah, it's on my list. It's on my list to read The Fourth Turning.
Yeah, shall I carry on?
Yeah, can do. Yeah.
So this world came crashing down in the catastrophic year 1914, which was not only the year of the outbreak of World War I, but the year that the world's major economies went off of the gold standard and replaced it with unsound government money. Only Switzerland and Sweden, who remained neutral during World War One, were to remain on a gold standard in the 1930s. The era of government-controlled money was to commerce globally after that, with unmitigated disastrous consequences. While the gold standard of the 19th century was arguably the closest thing that the world had ever seen to an ideal sound money, it nonetheless had its flaws. First, governments and banks were always creating media of exchange beyond the quantity of gold in their reserves. Second, many countries used not just gold in their reserves, but also currencies of other countries. Britain, as the global superpower at the time, had benefited from having its money used as a reserve currency all around the world, resulting in its reserves of gold being a tiny fraction of its outstanding money supply. With growing international trade relying on settlement of large quantities of money across the world, the Bank of England's banknotes became, in the minds of many at the time, as good as gold. Hence the phrase. While gold was very hard money, the instruments used for settlement of payments between central banks, although nominally redeemable in gold, ended up in practice being easier to produce than gold. Actually, on that point, good as gold, I always say to my kids, that's as good as Bitcoin. I was like, I'm trying to already instill it into them.
That's you're already trying to propagandize them.
Yeah.
Start a new trend.
They don't understand any of that yet, but they already know what Bitcoin is, sort of. So these two flaws meant that the gold standard was always vulnerable to a run on gold in any country where circumstances might lead a large enough percentage of the population to demand redemption of their paper money and gold. The fatal flaw of the gold standard at the heart of these two problems was that settlement in physical gold is cumbersome, expensive and insecure, which meant it had to rely on centralising physical gold reserves in a few locations, banks and central banks, leaving them vulnerable to being taken over by governments. As the number of payments and settlements conducted in physical gold became an infinitely smaller fraction of all payments, the banks and central banks holding the gold could create money unbacked by physical gold and use it for settlement. The network of settlement became valuable enough that its owner's credit was effectively monetized. As the ability to run a bank started to imply money creation, governments naturally gravitated to taking over the banking sector through central banking. The temptation was always too strong, and virtually infinite financial wealth this secured could not only silence dissent, but also finance propagandists to promote such ideas. Gold offered no mechanism for restraining the sovereigns, and had to rely on trust in them not abusing the gold standard and the population remaining eternally vigilant against them doing so. This might have been feasible when the population was highly educated and knowledgeable about the dangers of unsound money, but with every passing generation, hence the fourth turning, the intellectual complacence that tends to accompany wealth, the siren song of con artists and court jester economists, could prove increasingly irresistible for more of the population, leaving only a minority of knowledgeable economists and historians fighting an uphill battle to convince people that wealth can't be generated by tampering with the money supply. That sound familiar?
Yeah, literally.
That allowing a sovereign the control of the money can only lead to them increasing their control of everyone's life, and that civilized human living itself resets on the integrity of money providing a solid foundation for trade and capital accumulation. Gold, being centralised, made it vulnerable to having its monetary role usurped by its enemies, and gold simply had too many enemies, as Mises himself well understood. Is that missing a bit? Or?
Let's have a look. No. We've almost finished this chapter as well. So
cool. The nationalists are fighting the gold standard because they want to sever the countries from the world market and to establish national autarky as far as possible. Interventionist governments, pressure groups are fighting the gold standard because they consider it the most serious obstacle to their endeavours to manipulate prices and wage rates. That answers your question. Why do they come off the gold standard? But the most fanatical attacks against gold are made by those intent upon credit expansion, with them With them, credit expansion is the panacea for all economic ills. The gold standard removes the determination of cash-induced changes in purchasing power from the political arena. Its general acceptance requires the acknowledgement of the truth that one cannot make all people richer by printing money. The abhorrence of the gold standard is inspired by the superstition that omnipotent governments can create wealth out of little scraps of paper. The governments were eager to destroy it because they were committed to the fallacies that credit expansion is an appropriate means of lowering the rate of interest and of improving the balance of trade. People fight the gold standard because they want to substitute national autarky for free trade, war for peace, totalitarian government, omnipotence for liberty. The 20th century began with governments bringing their citizens' gold under their control through the invention of the modern central bank on the gold standard. As World War I started, the centralisation of these reserves allowed these governments to expand the money supply beyond their gold reserves, reducing the value of their currency. Yet central banks continued to confiscate and accumulate more gold until the 1960s, where the move toward a US dollar global standard began to shape up. Although gold was supposedly demonetized fully in 1971, central banks continued to hold significant gold reserves and only disposed of them slowly before returning to buying gold in the last decade. Even as central banks repeatedly declared the end of gold's monetary role, their actions in maintaining their gold reserves ring truer. From a monetary competition perspective, keeping gold reserves is a perfectly rational decision. Keeping reserves in foreign governments, easy money, only will cause the value of the country's currency to devalue along with the reserve currencies, while the seigniorage accrues to the issuer of the reserve currency, not the nation's central bank. Further, should central banks sell all their gold holdings, estimated at around 20% of global gold stockpiles, the most likely impact is that gold, being highly prized for its industrial and aesthetic uses, would be bought up very quickly with little depreciation of its price, and the central banks would be left without any gold reserves. The monetary competition between easy government money and hard gold will likely result in one winner in the long run. Even in a world of government money, governments have not been able to decree gold's monetary role away, as their actions speak louder than their words.
Yeah.
Very true.
What's this? Central bank official gold reserves.
So it just shows central banks were decreed like from 1970 ish. In the 60s it was slowly going down, and then you can see the uptick from 2010 ish, and I would imagine that's even more the case today from when this was written.
That was a mind-blowing chapter.
I'd argue it's probably the most important one in the whole book.
Yeah.
Because it shows that it just literally shows you what
this is not a new issue that we're facing today.
Exactly. It just repeats, and I understand why it's so hard for people to grasp this, because we've only lived with this. There is no you can't see
exactly
these other eras and stuff.
People can't even fathom anything different because we haven't lived. And we haven't experienced anything else.
And we're also just the most distracted that we've ever been with Netflix and just the rise of social media and things like that, and people's attention span. And none of this is like riveting stuff. It's not. There's no one that's going to be watching this right now that is not seriously interested in this.
Yeah.
So it's like it's hard. It's hard to get people's attention, and to even when it's so obvious to when you see it in history.
I think sooner or later people are going to have to take notice, take action,
and it's not a choice. And that's the thing that I've tried to explain to close friends and things, is that you can't just stick your head in the sand and be like, oh no, but I trust my government, I trust them to look after me, and I trust that I'm going to receive my pension, and I trust that I'm going to get this, that and the other, because it's just going to be, it will be so bad for people that just don't understand what is coming. I think it's going to be bad for a lot of people anyway, this whole transition over these next sort of 10 years.
So have you read The Fourth Turning, did you say, or is it?
I've read so many books like that I kind of forget. I'm fairly sure I've got it, but yeah, it would have been a while ago that I read it, if I did.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that in the week, and we'll crack on with that.
There's definitely a good YouTube video on that.
Yeah.
Again, which
a
just
good
kind
TikTok
of
on
explains
it.
Yeah.
Should we call it a day for this week?
Yeah.
That was, my mind is just cooked now. I've got nothing further to add. Have you?
No, that's everything.
Let's call it a day, and we'll crack on next week with government money.
Cool.